it's going to be something a little bit different. Have Stephen here that from the Bliss Podcast, and sometimes when I'm out there and I'm kind of preaching about the whole empathy and car sales and stuff like that, I feel like I'm on my own little island because it's one of those things I'm saying that a lot of people don't want to step up and just talk about because it's a tough topic. It's a tough topic. Well, one of the people that has dedicated his life to it is Stephen from the Bliss Podcast. And so, Stephen, introduce yourself. Tell us, hey, what's your philosophy around embedding love and empathy and all of this stuff into scalable systems? How do you make this work? What was the driver?
Yeah, the driver on this. So it's good to be here, first of all, Andrew. Continuing our conversation from our podcast yesterday, right? And well, I don't know when the show airs, but yeah, we're two of us talking again. Where it started from for me was probably a few different things. One, I just remember this conversation I had with my grandpa. Um, he was, in his 80s, and he just pulled me aside once and he's like, "Hey, whatever you do in life, business, whatever, do it with love." And this is something I already inherently knew. Uh, but hearing it from someone who has this life experience, 80 plus years, who was very happy in his, later years and actually working continually because he was very passionate about what he was doing. So just hearing that, kind of stuck with me. And then I remember there was this other event I went to. It's this consciousness event where we're talking about oneness and integral theory and things like this. And they're like, "So how are you going to apply this to your business?" And at the time I'm like, I have no freaking idea. I do ads, right? Google ads. How am I going to apply that? So, but as that question kind of stuck with me over the years, and then we got to a point, I think it was around 2018. So fast forward a little bit, and I get to around 2018 with our business, and we're going through this stage of growth in our business where I was concerned about our losing our culture, where I didn't want, you know, things to get lost that made us what we are, the real substance of what we were. And so in business, you get to these stages of business where it's about scale and then it's about systemizing so you can handle that scale. And what happens a lot of times is you do lose culture when you go to that systemization part of it, where you're taking shortcuts, you're trying to make things fast.
Yeah.
You lose the human element a lot of times. And so I'm thinking about the stages of business growth and then also the stages of consciousness that we studied, over the years. I'm like, how can I combine these two? And really, it turns out with consciousness as we evolve, it's really our ability to take on more perspectives, simply like the ability to empathize with more and more people. That's really, if you were to simplify it,
I like
that's what
that.
it does get, yeah, what it gets down to. And so we've seen examples of people who are very consciously evolved, and we know that's one of their main traits. We've seen businesses that are very consciously evolved, and turns out that's kind of the same trait too, is they're these very empathetic businesses, and they kind of are infused with that. So this is really how we started our philosophy around Bliss, which is build love into scalable systems. It's because we kind of knew where consciousness is growing. We knew where businesses were growing. How can we combine these two? And so we kind of know where the future of business is going. And now you've got like Gen Z, we understand what really motivates these younger generations. All the work we've done consciously and through our gravity, they're coming up to that level really quick. They're like, because they have examples to follow. And
Oh
so
yeah.
they're coming up to that consciousness level very quickly. And now they're going to make, up what 25% of the workforce right now. So if you're not understanding what motivates them, and the key to success with them is authenticity. And so if you're not playing, in that arena, you're going to fail miserably with them. And we see that a lot in our marketing business, where we see brands that just completely swing and miss with trying to be authentic when they really just aren't walking the walk a lot of times. So all that coming together is kind of the philosophy of where we are with our business and our approach to marketing, trying to get people to understand this is the future of business. It's the inevitable side of it. So even though you're feeling alone out there, you're just a trailblazer. Okay, you are creating the path for
I
other people.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, the topic of consciousness is something that over the years, I'm sure a lot of us have kind of mildly obsessed over is this other this other part of us that if you once you tap into it and you realize exactly that there's another conversation that's going on with us as humans. And that conversation is quite literally not the words that we say in that body language, but it's that connection and being able to be conscious of it really does open up a lot of doors and open your eyes to many different things. And you're right, Gen Z seem to come out of the wrapper with almost like an overload of, okay, now your eyes are opened up a lot more than normal. And I mean, it was kind of forced upon them too, but you're absolutely right, 100% with that. Um,
Yeah, it's a lot of the hard work we've put in, as generations before them, just to get to this point, and they're going to take the baton and take it further.
oh yeah, yeah, and I mean, once you throw AI in there, which we'll talk about in just a second, it's the sky's that we don't even know where the sky is. It's beyond the limit. But so in automotive sales, we tend to deal with this, and you mentioned it for a second, is almost this lack of identity or loss of identity. This ability to look at what you're doing, and you kind of become this NPC of sorts in this business, and things like empathy just kind of go out the window. And you said that empathy can be built into systems. How can you avoid empathy simply becoming just this another box that you check where you just kind of feel to yourself that it's just another thing that I have to do? How do you make that feel real?
Yeah, think there's a couple different things here that come to mind. So I think we've all kind of seen some of those companies, have those corporate, ESG events, those charity things where it just feels like a checkbox, right? Like, hey, we're doing this. Part of that is, I think, because it really doesn't tie to a higher purpose of what they're about. They just really aren't about that to begin with. If they had something, a charity or cause that was really close to them, embedded in their own mission and purpose as a business, then you're like, yeah, they're about this. So it's not that checkbox feeling, I think, sometimes. But like for us, I think when we're talking about systems, what I really want to do is kind of embed and systemize opportunities for empathy and kindness, like things that are prompts for us. Can we prompt us to be better humans in a way? So I think if you're looking at it from that perspective, it becomes less of a checkbox and more of just, hey, here's an opportunity for you to step into and show your humanness, right? So um, we've done things where we've looked at systems that have broke down in businesses, a lot of these scandals where problems erupted, and we kind of took apart, hey, what are the key parts here where these systems have failed? And you look and there's all these there's different components of systems. I won't get into all the technical parts of it, but a couple of them are the purpose of the system and the feedback loop. And both of these, where they fail the most is when they don't have empathy in them. So if that purpose doesn't have empathy, the purpose of our system is to just drive sales, just profit, or something like that, you're going to go sideways when it comes to dealing with people or dealing with the environment or something like that, right? We've seen it time and time again. So if your purpose is very narrow and not empathetic, I think you're going to see that's where you can introduce these problems. The other part of it is that feedback loop, where this is probably the most empathetic part of any system, is it's giving you feedback from what's going on, your inputs, your process, your output, and now you're getting feedback. Well, in those kind of business scandal situations, it's the feedback loop either didn't really exist to begin with, or it was like swept under the rug. Oh yeah, there's a problem, but if we don't look at it, we're going to still hit our quotas, hit our numbers, and we're just going to leave that there. And really, it just turns out to be just a kind of a zombie waiting to come at you again at some other point. So I know you've talked about the system of car sales being broken, right? And I think there's a few reasons for that, but customers kind of hate it. So they're coming into this system with this concept of, I don't want to be taken advantage of, and your sales teams too are kind of burnt out, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think both of these really are missing this higher why approach of to what they're doing, right? And we've talked about, I think, in our podcast with you a little bit, was the importance of the why with your customers. And so when you kind of empathize with that why and why they're there, what's really behind this purchase, my daughter needs a new car. I want to make sure it's safe, right? Or my car is not reliable. I want all that stress gone, right? There's all these different whys behind it. So when you can kind of empathize with their why, and step into that and actually start caring, can we systemize this in a way so that you're actually having a process that gives you an opportunity to do that, makes you aware that, hey, here's an opportunity for you to, here's questions to ask, here's prompts for you, prompts for your customers. And so I think when you take all that out of there and you don't have that meaning and fulfillment in what you're doing, that's why you're seeing like burnout with sales staff and stuff like that. It just feels like a grind. It's not something, like my grandpa was passionate about every day, going to and looking forward to. It's just this grind, and it 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 wears down on you if you're not aware of this is what's pulling your energy away, is you just aren't finding meaning and fulfillment. And how can you do that? Can we systemize ways for you to do that?
Yeah, and it's very easy in this business of car sales to feel like you're completely lost. It's just because you're dealing with customer after customer, and then all of a sudden you get 5, 10 customers in on the day. If you haven't done any business, it's demoralizing, and that I think is what a lot of car sales consultants really just kind of need to understand. And the reason that people like you and myself, on this podcast and the previous one, and by the way, if you're listening, go check out that other one. The link's in the show notes. Um, when it comes to losing yourself and taking empathy and putting it in the back burner, I get it. I've been there. Automotive sales burnout is akin to depression, where you feel like the world's gonna collapse simply because if it's a bad month, you ain't paying your bills. And and that's, kind of when you're starting out, or if you're just really bad with your money, or you just don't sell cars. But the deal is that with empathy, if you feel it's too hard and you burner it, well, I guess question for you, Steve. How much of your, I guess, professionalism life could you potentially take out if you just take empathy and put it on the back burner, or vice versa? What could you gain if you put it on in?
Right
Oh,
now, 4 out of 5 people that come to work, they are not engaged. This is a huge problem. So, I mean, you're giving the examples in, the car and the automotive sales industry. It's just worldwide, 21% are only 21% are engaged when they're coming to work. And so there's that 4 to 5. Why are we not engaged when we're coming to work? And a lot of it really does have to go back to that purpose of what I'm doing, and figuring out a way that you can, sometimes it's just a little perspective shift of changing how you view your job, where how am I truly in service to someone, right? It's like, okay, I could focus on sales and profit and all that stuff. That's not very motivating, for the, yeah, I got to pay the bills. I don't want to be poor. Yeah, that's motivating. But your soul is telling you, you're in the middle of this soulless machine and you're caught in it and kind of trapped. So it's like, that's where you're feeling that disengagement and that
yeah,
lack of fulfillment, is just because this is cold machine. And so it's like, okay, wait, how can I really look at this from an empathetic standpoint, from a, my energy standpoint, to where I can twist the perspective a little bit on this? How am I in service to someone else truly? What, this father comes in with his daughter. He really wants to make sure she's, safe, not being taken advantage of. How can I help with that situation? And you start to find more fulfillment in little ways when you start thinking about how you are really in service to people. And I think that's really key. But right now, I mean, it's not just this industry; it's worldwide, and the numbers are getting worse. The past few years, it's just
oh,
going
it's
down.
it's
So
terrible.
yeah, it's a disaster for sure.
Yeah. Now, I just like to point somebody out, or something out to everybody here. Steve doesn't sell cars, gang, but yet he knows the problems with this. Well, because Steve, you probably bought a few cars, and we've talked about human connection a little bit, and we've talked about obviously empathy, but your company, AICMO, it's fascinating. You got a lot going on over there, and an AI driven platform that focuses on human connection seems to me, if I didn't play with AI at all, I'd look at that and go, empathy, AI, come on, brother. I mean, I see a stoplight every day, and there's nothing empathetic about that darn thing. So, with this, what are the biggest challenges that you see in getting companies to trust things like AI with something as delicate as empathy?
Yeah, I just thinking back, you're saying, I don't sell cars, but I know, I remember sitting in this Google meeting and them telling me there's 700 touch points in automotive sales before you make that purchase.
Crazy.
So it's crazy. It's in a crazy amount. And people are doing all this kind of research and everything. And how do you cut through all that noise? Right? There's just so much competing noise. There's so much in there, and there's a lot of tactics and stuff. And that's what we do with our clients and things. But really, you don't want to be stuck in that sea of kind of sameness that everyone's talking about features and benefits and blah blah blah, and it's just all this noise coming at you all the time. So what we're doing with our platform with the AI chief marketing officer is really we're starting in a few places. One is trying to help you with a higher purpose to what you do, trying to help you go through a process of like a Q&A and prompting you to really get down to the higher meaning of what you're doing so that we can tell a story from those guide rails through the AI. That's one key thing. The other thing we're doing is we're taking you through the emotional customer journey that your customers are going through. Here's where they're at in this stage. Here's where they're at in this other stage emotionally. And as you can imagine, in the car sales, you go through this. The most enjoyable part's probably the research for most people, and then you get to this stage of, well, here's the actual experience of buying a car. And if I were to ask anyone, what's one of the most painful buying experiences for you? Automotive sales may come up in the conversation, among the top few probably. Um, and really what that is it's a key part of experience that people need to understand, where you can move someone from, hey, I made this sale, they're satisfied, to, hey, these guys are awesome. I want to tell everyone else about them because my customer experience was so great in that. So there's emotions involved in all through this process. And one of the tools we have on our platform is to really help you with those connecting emotions when they're experiencing even your sales process, where we want you to help bring some surprise and delight into that process, because that's going to those are the kind of emotionally connecting um, things you want to be doing. There's 17 different emotions if you want to get into it on the experience side of the sale, and you really want to be on the good side, not those 8 9 general emotions on the bad side, which I'm afraid this industry is so often stuck into.
We live in those emotions, man.
We live in it, and you really need to overcome that.
Yeah.
And you're already coming in a deficit when they're walking in through the door with you. So um, I, yeah, there's a lot I think that AI can help us with. The question I often ask is like, can artificial intelligence help us be more real? And I absolutely think it can help like rehumanize, like you said, the automotive sales and automotive marketing. So we need people like you, helping this dig this industry out of its sort of inauthenticity that it's in, because when you do that, then we as marketers and on our platform, we can tell better stories, more emotionally connecting stories with companies that are walking the walk. And you've got these younger generations coming up that this is what they want. they,
Yeah.
you know, they don't want all the other stuff, and they're going to find a way to get around the other stuff. And we're seeing, disruptive models in your industry sometimes too, trying to answer that question. So, yeah, I really do think it can help prompt us to be better humans, and that's kind of what our platform's designed to do.
I like how you put that, is that we use prompts to program the AI and then hope that the AI prompts us to be better humans. Now, because we talked about AI chief marketing officer, um, and I don't want to waste this moment, how can people actually look at that? Where do they go to see your product and be able to see what we're talking about here?
Yeah, go to aicmo.io. Check it out. You can, take a free trial, take it for a spin, play around with all the tools. Check out all the different tools in there. For sure, go there, use it. What we really do want to do is, again, this goes back to our Bliss philosophy of building love and a scalable system. We've got a methodology in our marketing agency. We can handle 100 200 clients at a time with that in person, but how can we scale this loving empathetic approach? So we've built this platform is just kind of a natural out of that. It's like, hey, here's actually what we do a lot of the times is go through these processes. And I've tried to make it so that my 80-year-old mother can go through there and even use it.
Nice.
So we've had her testing it among all kinds of
Perfect.
businesses testing it. So it's like trying to make it as simple as possible, and we're going to keep making it as simple as possible because it's hard. We've got like 100 different expert techniques in there, and we don't want to just be hitting you with jargon and stuff like that where you just don't understand. We just want it to make sense, or have you trust that uh, what you're doing is actually going to be following some type of approach that some guru out there is probably um, telling you should do. There's so many of them out there. It's really hard for people to understand or know what they don't know.
Yep. Yep. Awesome. So Gallup and Harvard say empathy and compassion improve both loyalty and sales. But some leaders out there, dealer principals, owners, managers, and even some sales consultants, feel that these words they're soft. Now, you asked me a question yesterday when we were podcasting on part one of this about love. So I'm going to ask you as well: is that how do you flip the script with leaders who think love has no place in business?
Couple things here. So like the first thing that I do is I'm going to give them data. So like I know, like we were talking about the emotional connection and having empathy. I know that if I can build that emotional connection with a customer, I'm going to have 306% higher lifetime value than a satisfied customer. That's huge. So even if you're a cold, businessman or woman out there who just wants the numbers, look up some empathy related stat to whatever part of your business you're concerned about, and it probably proves that an empathetic approach is going to be better in the long term. So there's all kinds of data around there. And so we're starting with some data. Sometimes it's just the way to speak the language there. The other thing though is, I will straight up argue that love is foundational to business. Actually, I don't even have to do that arguing, because on our podcast every week, I'm asking people coming in, CEOs, business leaders, thought leaders, people who run massive companies, how can they be profitable and loving at the same time? And I ask them, what role does love play in business every single week? And I get great answers. And it's rare that someone's said, I can't see a role. They've all come in with something that's like, hey, no, this is huge part of what we do. It's almost even foundational to what we do. And
So
I do believe it is foundational just because of where we know where consciousness is growing and all that. So
yeah, it seems like when you sit down and like when you asked me about love yesterday, it, to build off what you're saying, it seems like it's just one of those things that's lost that is there with everybody that when you communicate with them, but once you finally can tap into it, it seems like it's a connection that is nearly unbreakable. And being able to build it into everything with like Bliss Podcast, I find fascinating just because the connection is what is going to make it happen. It's just that connection, if it's not recognized, empathy just doesn't seem to stand a chance if you simply just ignore it because it's too soft. Which is sad that we're in a position now in society where we just look at the soft things as let's ignore them, but let's also debate every emotional claim that people tend to have online. But I guess that's why social media thrives, right? Um, so with this though, we have a lot of managers, we have a lot of owners, we have a lot of people that are directly commanding sales forces out there. What's a practical first step that they can take this month to weave empathy into their sales culture without completely cratering their sales process? Because this takes
yeah,
time to implement.
yeah, and I can think of several things here. One thing I want to hit on though, and just follow up on that, is you said connection. I counted, I think, three times in that. And really, one of my phrases that I just preach all the time is make connection a goal. No matter what you're doing, just make connection a goal. And so usually that does involve some kind of love, empathy, and kindness. And if your intention is coming from that place, you're always going to be coming from a higher ground, I think, no matter what you're doing, right? So just really quick, yeah, make connection your goal, people. I mean, even dealing with colleagues and everything, there's so many things out there right now trying to pull us apart, so many disconnecting activities on a daily basis. Try and, turn the tide on that, make connection a goal. But I think to answer your question too, this is where we were in a lot of ways, many years ago, was like, I know where I want to get to. How the heck do I get there to, it seems like this huge task to make this very, empathetic, compassionate company. And how do we do that? But really, it was like one little thing at a time. And so it was just asking this question, how can we bliss this? How can we build love into this system? And it's just like one little thing we can do. And so instead of it being a random act of kindness by that one person, in your office that's, just got that in them all the time, it's like, well, how can we systemize this to make it not so random and just part of our overall company DNA? So we keep asking that question. And so little by little, we're just adding these little elements in there of building love into what we're doing. And after a while, a little by little, a little makes a lot, and it starts to build up. And this is your culture now, and this is who you are, and this is a story that you can tell that people can feel when they're talking to, you know, someone at the front desk to the CEO, where everyone's really vibing in this same sort of level. And now this is that authenticity that you've been kind of searching for, that the younger generation needs. And this is, they'll come work for you. They'll come be your biggest advocate. They'll do the marketing for you, telling their friends when you can hit that level of connection with someone. So, but it does just look around you. There are probably different systems of every part of your business. And if you just ask, how can I do something loving here? What you're really doing is you're leaving a legacy of yourself. You're leaving a mark that you can be proud of later. So when you're gone, you may have added these 10, 15 little things to your business, but now you've actually left this legacy of love that can kind of have this ripple effect and change an organization and change people's lives. People coming into that car dealership that are going through all kinds of things. And the fact, if you suddenly now got this system of empathy and kindness and love in there, you don't even know the ripple effect that this can have on that one person and how that can go out there. So once you systemize this and you try and systemize that, you are really leaving some kind of legacy for yourself in one way or another. So just ask that question and just ask it again and again.
One of the things that we talk about in the automotive industry is that when cars are being built, and I'm going to relate this to the fact that I call humans fleshy robots all the time, is that when cars are being built, we start off with our design, then we start off with our test mules out there, and then we start making minor tweaks to everything to improve how the bearing works, improve how the turbo works, improve how the nav works. And each individual thing eventually ends up to an end product, which usually is stunning and beautiful and, does what it's supposed to do, or it tows the boat anchor of mediocrity and you go out and you buy the tan one because you can't argue with it. But either way, it comes down to the fact that perfection isn't an overnight thing. It's let's really critically look at step one and change step one. Because when we're sitting here talking about empathy, I mean, we have talked about this well over our limited time limits. And oh, look at that. And so when it comes down to this, it's a topic that you and I are passionate about, but getting other people to understand it is a little tough. And you're right. Pick the first step. Don't go ahead and try to eat the whole apple. You're just going to choke on it, just one bite at a time. But this is where it gets a little interesting with some dealers right now is that they go ahead and they're like, AI is the greatest thing on the planet. And they're kind of screaming it off the top of the ceilings. And business development departments and BDCs out there are just getting just hammered with, hey, I got AI, I got AI, I got AI. AI automation is obviously gaining a ton of ground, and you're kind of at the forefront of it. Um, what can companies do to kind of mitigate the risk when they start to integrate all of these things without you losing that human connection?
Yeah, this is really one of the things that started me on this path in AI a few years ago, because we've always been working in AI in our marketing, for the past 10 plus years. I don't know how long we've had AI that we're doing on our different platforms we're marketing. But that AI is got a singular goal. And if that goal is wrong or off, or you've made a bad conversion or something, it's still going to optimize toward that singular goal no matter what. And so you're going to get all kinds of garbage that's happening. So, but I worry now that AI is getting more sophisticated, though. But if we're still optimizing toward like a singular goal of maximize profits, it's not going to be thinking about this more conscious approach to what it should be doing, like this conscious capital approach where, yeah, investor stakeholder is an important part of any business, right? But there's also your customers, there's also your partners, your employees, your community or environment. We want AI to consider all of these things when making a decision, so that it's not just going to run wild like some of the controversies the scandals we've covered in the past on our podcast. But I worry about that. I worry about how persuasive AI is, like, and people using it in kind of a bad way. There was a University of Zurich study. They went on Reddit and they got into trouble for this, but basically they were using AI to see how they could persuade people. So it'd be like AI versus human trying to persuade someone. It was 6 times more persuasive than the human. And that's like right now. Like, I can't even imagine 4 or 5 years from now when it is super persuasive, where it's like you add another zero on that, 60 times more persuasive. So if we aren't setting up better foundational goals for what we want with AI, more conscious goals, I do worry about, us just chasing that efficiency and trampling over humans and environment and everybody in the process.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. I really think at times when, we sit down and watch something like The Matrix, it's like, no, maybe that is like future history. If we just integrate it and not think about it. But you've thought about this a lot. And, with Bliss being fully embraced, if it was in the automotive industry, what would the automotive industry and the customer experience look like 5 years from now?
Yeah, I think first off, I think you're on the right track. I mean, this is consciously where it will be heading. And, like you said, you felt like you're on an island, but at some point, everyone's going to get there. They're going to get there dragging, kicking, and screaming, in the process. They will get there. Can we make it faster? That would be nicer, please. But I think going through that process, um, having, kindness and listening being kind of vital to that process, I think is important. And transparency is a form of kindness as well. So having more of that in the process. And I think people wouldn't worry about having, an advocate or guardian with them, like we were talking about yesterday post show when you come into the car sales process. I, I think when you can handle some of that, um, with kindness, I think that's going to move the needle a lot. And I think too, if you're not just thinking of the sale as the ultimate goal, but maybe you're thinking something like maybe referrals, thinking again beyond that, like, so then I'm going to do right by this person. This isn't the end of the sale. No, this is the beginning of a relationship, right? And what I really want to do is have them recommend more of their friends to me, because it's been a great experience for them. So making connection as a goal, have me come back even to where I want to come back to the dealership for something free or some value add where it's not even, something cool where it's not even have to do with the car I just bought. It's more, and while I'm there, you connect with me again. And hey, Steve, how's it going with, your AI platform, whatever you know about me, right? You're curious about and you ask about that. And now you've got this connection building opportunity. So I think making connection and bigger, a long-term goal, not just an immediate sales goal, I think will benefit everybody involved in that relationship. It'll become a more human caring process, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I'd love. And you're doing that work. I think, you're in the
Thanks.
trenches, in the front ground. And I really do think that it's rare. But I'm telling, everyone who's listening right now, you've got Gen Z coming up, and this is the stuff that they're going to care about, and they're going to be, a major part of your future business, and following them, the next generations as well, even more.
Yeah.
They're going to be looking forward to even more. So it's just if you start now, little by little, adding things to your business, you'll be ready for that.
So you have zero company. You have uh, AI CMO. When it comes to just you in general, what are you doing to make sure that you stay aligned with empathy, your purpose through tough times, and then what practices do you have to just keep yourself grounded? Because this is not our conversation. We make it look easy. It's not easy for the average person to go, oh wait, there is more to me, and I can do this. So how do you keep yourself in line?
I mean, the first, like, kind of a standard practice I think a lot of people do is I do daily meditation. I think it does help me not get caught up in my ego and emotions, and I can step outside of myself and all that, stay very grounded. Yes,
Yes,
I know.
yes.
And believe me, like uh, I subscribe to like Blinkist where you have like these book summaries, and I've probably read a couple thousand book summaries, but 500 of those in some way or another talk about the importance of meditation from some other angle. So just it's going to help you. Just do it if you can. Make it some kind of practice. It certainly helped me a lot. And like I said, it won't let me get caught up in my emotions or ego a lot more. I can just kind of see that for what it is. Um, the other thing I do is kind of an energy audit. So that's really asking, like, why am I avoiding this, or why do I feel some resistance of wanting to do this task, um, or this particular thing? And a lot of times it may come down to, like, oh, focus on your higher purpose. Focus on something that really resonates with you, and get yourself out of that grind mode a little bit. So being able to come back to, like, hey, I really think building love into systems and things like that. This is really, when you get down to it consciously, when we get to this next stage of consciousness, it's all about systems thinking and understanding that, and about compassion. And so it's combining these two things. So this gets me, fired up. I can talk about this and, on shows, and work all day, work all night, because if I'm focused on that, that's really passionate to me. So if I'm suddenly feeling tired about something, okay, wait, say energy audit, like I'm just checking myself. What don't I like particularly about this? And who knows where that may take you? It may take you into some childhood trauma you had way back when. But
Well,
yeah, some bigger picture issues. But really, especially if you're a leader, though, take care of your shit. All right, your employees don't need to deal with that.
exactly. All right. So we got a minute 30 left before I get booted here. Minute 20. How can people get in touch with you? We talked about it a minute ago. What could they do to integrate you into their lives, so to speak?
Yeah, if you want to check out the AI Chief Marketing Officer platform, go to aicmo.io. If you need a digital marketing agency, need those Google ads and the programmatic ads, or any social ads, that's what we do. You can go to zerocompany.com. If you want to hear me ask people what role love plays into business, please go to check out the Bliss Podcast. It's on wherever you listen to podcasts, and we have great guests like Andrew on all the time, and we're constantly, one of the questions we just always ask is, what role does love play in business? And we get just brilliant answers.
So there we go, gang. This is awesome. Thank you very much, Steve. Everybody, go on over to the Bliss Podcast. Subscribe to that. It's well worth your time. All right. So, Steve, thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
And awesome. Yep.